114 with JD Olsen. I was just telling him that we're just going to get right into it because I've been having these internet dropouts and what have you. So JD is somebody that I know, I'm pretty sure only through the online world, where where he is he's quite prolific with his video content. So JD Olsen, welcome to the Jeet Kune Dialogues.
How you doing, sir?
I'm good. So I want to mess with you a little bit right at the start.
Okay.
And ask you. I'm going to try to push something up here into the feed.
Okay.
And ask you, what the heck is that?
So that's actually my my PC. So on actually, funny enough, it's actually right here. So in my spare time or whatever you want to call it, when I'm not martial arting, I used to build computers, and I like to build gaming computers. So that is a Thermaltake Armor Revo case.
Okay.
That when I went to buy it, because I had been looking at it for probably like 2 years, it was actually out of stock. And so, hold on one second. My little vacuum just started up. I'm gonna stop him before he gets into here. So I found that case, and I wanted that case. And why is it not coming up? And for some reason, I'll just do this. Make my life easy. There. Now he can't come in the room. So I wanted that case, and we ended up having to go up to DC to buy that particular computer case, because when I placed my order, it was like, hey, no problem, and then it never showed up. And Tiger Direct was like, hey, sorry, we discontinued that. You won't be able to get that no more. We'll send you a replacement. And what showed up was ugly.
Right.
And so I went on Craigslist. I found somebody in DC selling the case, but it had the full computer in it. I talked to the girlfriend. I'm like, hey, I really want this. So we took a road trip. We drove up to DC. We bought a full computer. And then I ended up actually taking all the insides out of that computer, putting it in a different case. And actually I sold that to Ron Balicki for his son to have a gaming computer. So, and it was a good computer. It was a Core i5 Intel processor, but I just wanted the shell, because if you can see in the top of the picture, right at the very tippy top, there's a little port, and the port allows me to put any hard drive in there.
Okay.
And then that was like an external hard drive. So like, if you're like, well, I need just to get the file off of this old hard drive, like this one here, I just drop it in the top, boom, it spins up, and it's a hard drive. So
wow.
Yeah, that's just my gaming PC, but it's not on the floor anymore. It's actually on the desk. And then all the lights and stuff are Razer components, so I can make all of them configured however I want.
Okay, so you said that, so when you're not martial arting, this is your thing.
Yeah.
Is the martial arting a full-time gig?
It is.
It is. Okay.
I'm retired military, so I retired in 2014.
Okay.
20 years, and then I've been running my gym full time ever since. Like, that's all I do.
Right. So I mean, heaven forbid, but if the martial arting thing, which I mean, I've been looking at your gym, it's not going anywhere. You're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you.
But you could go into that stuff full time, couldn't you?
Backup to this. So before I retired the military, I had to come up with a backup plan. And at that time, I had been teaching in South Carolina since 2005, because I moved here in 2004 in September. I've been teaching since 2005, and I wasn't making any money yet. Like, the school supported the school, but I'm like, what about me? And so I had already started going back to school. So in the process of me being retired, I went on and I got my master's degree in IT, and I got a second bachelor's in business management. And my backup plan was to teach computer science. And since I build computers, I've actually built. I'm on an Apple right now. I built a Linux server, and then I built my PC. And at the time of that picture, I actually had on my desk, I had one of every operating system. So at any given time, if you say, hey, how do you do this?
Right.
I could go, oh, on a Linux, you do this. On a Windows, you do that. On an Apple, you do that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be knowledgeable. So if a kid were ever to ask me, like, hey, professor, how do you do this? I could be like, this is how it's done.
Mm-hmm. All right. When I can afford you, I'm going to come your way to teach me all that stuff.
It changes so fast, though. Like now,
Yeah.
I mean, like, especially when it comes to some of the stuff on the phones, I can't keep up. I'm like, I don't know how to do that anymore. You guys are using apps I don't know.
If you can't keep up, there's no hope for me. I mean, I'm literally 2 minutes before we came on, I was reading Ed Stahl's comments on a post. By the way, you must have noticed that for the postcard, every picture of you I put up, I had to crop Ed Stahl out of it.
We do a lot of work together. He's a good guy,
Right.
and of course, Ron Balicki is my Sifu. Ron is my JKD instructor. Mm-hmm. I'm not an instructor yet. I'm still advanced 1 or advanced 2. I think I'm advanced 1. Okay. And so I go to Ed for anything direct. Right. And then, of course, when it's time to test, of course, I go to Sifu Ron.
Well, but that is actually how you came onto my radar, because of and let me see if I remember correctly. You said in the video, you said to Ed, there's this drill that I came across in 95, I think you said, right? Yeah. And you had a question about, right. And that's what put you on my radar. Gotcha. So then I watched you guys interacting, and look, I am always looking for the smart JKD guys. Yeah. Right. So I watched you guys, I was like, okay, I got to talk to this JD Olsen fella, right? Okay. So I was going to ask you to give me your Jeet Kune lineage and all that stuff, but you just broke it down for us. Yeah.
So in Japan, I trained in Japan with my instructor, a guy named AJ Weimer, and we did the way the classes were broken down, because like I'm kind of old school. So like I was military, and I like the old Steven Seagal stuff, not the new stuff, but the old stuff. And I was like, I would love to be able to go to Japan and learn Aikido, because I had already done Taekwondo, I had already done Judo, I had already done karate, and I even done Kenpo. And I was like, I don't have any joint locks. Like I was really weak in that area. And I'm like, man, if I could go to, Japan and, be like Seagal and get that stuff on. Mm-hmm. So I went to Japan. I got stationed at Yokota, and right away I got, one of my coworkers is like, hey, you're into martial arts? I was like, I am, and I want to learn Aikido. And he took me to Tokyo, and we rode the train down there, and I got to go to a school in Doha, and I started Aikido. Mm-hmm. And I knew enough Japanese, like for karate, but like they're speaking full sentences, and I was like, I don't know what we're doing. Yeah. And like to try to learn these wrist locks and all the stuff without speaking anything, I was way beyond what I should have been on. Mm-hmm. And I got lucky. There was another gentleman who worked on base, so he kind of translated some of the stuff for me. And then a buddy of mine, a guy named Greg Gray, was deployed at the time, and he came back. He's like, oh, you train martial arts too? And he introduced me to a gentleman named AJ, who was teaching on base. Mm-hmm. And so the way the classes were broken down, they were 90 minutes long, and you never knew what you were going to get. It was either Kali, Aikido, or Jiu-Jitsu. Right. And it was 45 minutes of one and 45 minutes of the other. Well, I didn't like Jiu-Jitsu, and I didn't want Kali because I thought I knew how to do stick work until I did that class. And I just wanted the Aikido. And again, they never gave us a schedule. So there was many a day I'd show up. They're like, all right, we're doing Jiu-Jitsu and then Kali. And I'm like, oh. And I get mad, but I'd stay. And then eventually I got pretty good at those things. And in the Filipino martial art work, they had a lot of trapping drills and Jeet Kune drills. And in that time frame was right around the time of the nucleus for Jeet Kune. Mm-hmm. And it survived like all of but 6 months or whatever. And we were doing a lot of Jeet Kune training, aka trapping drills and lapsao and stuff like that. Yeah. But that was the question I had for Ed, because I'm like, I was taught this drill, but it didn't make any sense to me. And about 4 years ago, I was at a seminar with Sifu Fong, and I asked him, I'm like, hey, do you have any idea about this? But we're in the middle of a seminar, so I think he was just like, I think it's tied to something else, and then kind of went about his business because he was still teaching a seminar. And I was like, all right, maybe I'm missing a step. And then I had that idea. I'm like, hey, let me ask Ed, does he know this piece?
Right.
And you can see in my look, as soon as he does, he's like, I think they mean this. I'm like, that makes total sense. And then it all clicked after that.
Yeah, your on base story reminds me somewhat of Sifu Dan and Asano's on base training. Have you ever heard about his stuff?
I don't think so.
Yeah, he went through the same kind of thing. There was a bunch of different people teaching on base. And so he was exposed to a lot of stuff. And I think he was most impressed by Henry Slomansky, who was a Kempo guy. So when he was discharged, he looked up Kempo, and that's how he ended up training with Ed Parker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Right. So when you were talking about that, I was like, yeah, that sounds kind of familiar. Okay. So then explain then the name of the school, Keishidojo.
Keishidojo.
Yeah.
So training place of the dedicated warrior. So with AJ, so I stayed in Japan and I trained with AJ for about 6 years, and I eventually got my black belt with him. And upon getting your black belt, if you're gonna teach, if you're gonna open up a school, they give you a school name based on your personality, based on you. So
nice.
I was the person that was up at 5 a.m. I was there at lunchtime. I was there in the evenings. I was helping, with the website back then. I was helping do flyers, and I created a newsletter for the school. So I was deemed the most dedicated at the time. So then I got Kishi, dedicated warrior.
I love it.
There's another one, Onshi, because he's really quiet. Corey Woodsum is like a super kind of quiet. He's the quiet warrior. But you take that. So how I met Guru Ron is even weirder. So I'm at my very first Inasano seminar at a school in North Carolina called Hard Target, and it was Rob Hunter's gym, and it was a gorgeous gym. And I took a couple of my students and I said, hey, when we get there, spread out. Let's not partner together so we can learn from other people. And what do my two friends do? They partner together. And then I'm left off to myself. And I was like, you jerks. And so for the first part, because Guru Dan will do like 2 hours of one thing and then break, and then 2 hours of something else, and then we get lunch or whatever. And so for the first 2 hours, I am partnered with this guy who has never trained martial arts. He just was in town visiting his college buddies, and they're like, hey, dude, we're doing this thing with this legend that trained with Bruce Lee. And he's like, all right, I'll go do that. And so for 2 hours, I have to teach him how to throw a jab, how to throw a cross, I'm like, I didn't spend $200 to come train with Guru Dan to teach you how to do everything. So at the little 2 hour, at the first 2 hours at the break, I'm like, I'm finding me a new partner. And so there's this one guy in the room with a bright red shirt. And I said, well, let's partner together. And I get to talking to him. And I was like, he's like, well, where did you train? Or I asked him, where did he train? And he's like, oh, I trained in Japan. I'm like, oh, what did you train over there? And he told me he trained Kali, Jiu-Jitsu, and Aikido. I was like, that's an odd blend. That's what I trained in Japan. Where were you at? He's like, I was at Yokota. I was at Yokota. I'm like, when were you there? And he had left. And so what it ended up being is Charles, Sensei Falk, is my instructor's instructor. So I learned from AJ. AJ learned from a guy named Joel McRae, and Joel McRae was trained by Charles. So I met my great-grandfather at an Inasano seminar, and I'm like, holy smokes. And then
oh my God.
He's like, hey, if you want to train some, he's like, I'm going to have Guru Dan's son-in-law at my school in May. And he's like, he's like, I think Joe is coming, who is AJ's instructor. I was like, I don't know who Ron is, but I'm going to meet my instructor's instructor come hell or high water. And so I drive up to North Carolina. I took my motorcycle. That was not the smartest thing to do, but I put all my sticks and all my gear in my backpack, and I drove up to Wake Forest. And I met Charles, and I met Joe McCrae, who was AJ's instructor, and Charles welcomed me with like open arms. He was like super cool. They had like a private lunch arranged for like the instructors to meet with Guru Ron, and he's like, "Hey, you can come." He's like, you're part of the family. You're Joe's student. Come on, and I got to have dinner with Ron and everybody, and then that's what locked me in with Ron, is to be able to talk to him kind of offline and not martial art wise, and how much fun he was at the dinner thing. I was like, I want to learn from this man.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that time that AJ, my instructor, had just taken a job back in Japan to teach English. So I had no direct instructor in the States anymore. And I was like, well, Daddy,
yeah,
you're it. I'm going to learn from you. And I learned, of course, I've been with him since 2010, 2011. So I've just learned so many things. And I decided to try to do the Kali route first and not the JKD route. And then,
really? Why was that?
I thought I had a better grip of the Kali because of my Kali background.
Okay.
But I wasn't prepared for how in depth Ron's Kali was. Like, it was 10 times what my curriculum was. And over the years, I've come to learn like that original curriculum. I think because we were military and because we come and go so often, it was more of a hobbyist curriculum. Like, hey, look, this is how to get from point A to point B in a matter of so many years because we know you're going to be leaving. Okay. And then Ron's curriculum is way more fleshed out and just way more in depth. And it's like, you have all these things and it's like, oh, wow. And just been awesome ever since. And I still see AJ. He actually lives in Atlanta, and I'll run down, when I go to like train with the masters with Guru Dan and Sifu Fong, and I'll stay at his house and we'll trade drills and he'll have me do this. And it's like, well, how about this one? And then we just trade, and it's a ton of fun.
Yeah.
I feel like it's with AJ now, it's kind of like the Eric Paulson with Guru Dan. Like, even though Guru Dan is his instructor and he still treats him that way, they trade a lot of stuff at this point from what I've seen and what I've heard. And that's kind of how I feel with AJ.
Well, Inosano is probably, I don't know of anybody else who, on several different occasions, became the student of his own student.
Yeah.
He's done that a number of times.
Yeah, like he just mentioned how he was learning from Sifu Fong. He's like, love and training with him and getting more from him. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. The story you were telling about the hard target when they invited you to dinner and what have you, as an old school martial artist, that obviously meant a lot.
It was
a real lot.
Yeah, it was huge.
Isn't it? See, I think it's wonderful that we know that there are still those kind of martial artists out there.
Yeah.
Because if we spend too much time on Facebook and the YouTube in martial art, we'll forget that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right. So yeah. So I could tell that as an old school. Now, talking about old school martial artists. So, I realized that the term Jeet Kune doesn't appear in your, let's call it promotional material.
Correct, because I'm not an instructor.
I realized that. So when you started, I was like, oh, that's the answer.
Yeah, I don't promote or test in anything that I am not an instructor in. And Ron has given me permission. Like, go ahead, teach. He's like, you're far enough in this game. Yeah. You have permission, but I do not want to be that person that knows everything, and I truly don't. And so I've done enough of I've done training with the legends. I've done training with Ron for over the last 10 years. And I have done training with the masters for, I think, the last 7 years. Okay. So I have a lot of Jeet Kune training, and I have a lot of the trapping and stuff, but I am still dumbfounded and amazed. Like when Ed gets into it, or Ron gets into it, or Guru Dan gets into it, I'm just like, Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not that smart. Like,
Yeah.
it's just awesome. You know, I get the basic kickboxing stuff. I'm fine. You know, okay, lead kick, cross up, cross, rear kick, all that. That's fine. But it's just that the trapping just throws me off because it's just so cool. Because again,
Mhm.
I never had any of that back in the day. Like, I grew up taekwondo, karate, and the round block, but they didn't ever trap and continue on. It was like, oh, that's part of Huba. And then I didn't know Huba was such a small piece of this larger puzzle
Yeah.
until I got a chance to train with Guru Dan and Guru Ron. I'm like,
Right.
oh, there's so much more to this than I even knew.
Yeah. Well, once again, I gotta compliment you. It is refreshing to come across somebody who is humble enough to, all right, because let me tell you, there are people who, with less JKD training than you, will try to promote themselves as something,
Yeah, no,
right?
I don't. Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to be that guy, and I don't need everybody else coming after me like you don't know what you're talking about, and you're right, I don't. So like
Right.
I know enough, and that's why I like to have, like Ed right up the road. I'm like, hey, how does this work? Or how do I do this? And then he can
Hmm.
answer the question. And
Hmm.
then when I do my privates with Guran, and I'm still doing virtual privates with him right now, I'm like, hey, how does this work?
Yeah.
And we've been doing, the dummy stuff for through all of COVID. I've
Hmm.
been working the JKD Bruce Lee JKD dummy sets, and
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, but I'm not there yet. He's like, you're good. Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna test you, but you're good. Like you
Yeah.
know you're ready. And I was like, all right.
I wonder if there's anybody out there who, like you use the term fleshed out. I wonder if there's anybody out there who has as fleshed out a curriculum as does Ron Balicki. I,
Hmm.
I, you know, I don't think there is. I don't
So
think there
the thing
is.
that I get worried about, from what I've heard from Guru Ron or Sifu Ron, is I guess Sifu Dan has taught certain people different pieces of this puzzle. So when the time comes and he passes away, they all have to work together in order to have the full thing.
Hmm.
And in my opinion, just like with the nucleus, it's just going to become, well, I have this and I have this, and you need to come to me for that. And I don't see it happening where everybody's going to just work in harmony and
Yeah.
share all their stuff. I think it's going to go the other way, and people are going to fight over that. But I think, if there's anybody that has probably the most fleshed out, is going to be Ron, because he's in the family and he's had
Mhm.
all of that time to just absorb from Inosanto for so long. I was like,
Yeah.
well, if I had to hedge my bets, he's going to be the one.
Yeah.
So
Well, Sifu Dan is he is a bit of an idealist, so I could see him, having an idea like that.
yeah,
I mean, he's such an ideal. He sometimes expects people, in my opinion, he sometimes expects people to understand what he means,
yeah,
even if he doesn't explain it. So like I tell him, well, not all the time, but back in the day, we would talk about the whole Jeet Kune Do concepts thing, and I'd be like, well, yeah, but it's not being explained well,
right,
right? I get it. I mean,
yeah,
I spent so much time with him. I spent so much time with the old school guys, the Chris Kents and the Cass Magdas and what have you. So when I heard the term Jeet Kune Do concept, I was like, oh yeah, it makes perfect sense.
yeah,
To other people, however, who don't have that experience, it didn't make any sense to you. So I bring that up because I'm sure that you have been touched by the controversy and what have you. So if it's something that you don't care to talk about, just tell me. I don't want to get into that. But if it is, what have you cracked the Jeet Kune Do code? Do you have a solution to?
I probably do not. I do know what you're talking about. Like, again, I started karate and stuff in the 90s. So like I remember, when I got to my tech school and I was looking for something to do, there was a class and it said Jeet Kune Do concepts.
Mhm.
And I remember going there and watching, and it was like, okay, so you're teaching kickboxing, but you're calling it Jeet Kune Do. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And so then I quickly learned, and especially when I got to train with AJ more, I understood you can put the Jeet Kune concepts on anything. Anybody can say, well, I teach Jeet Kune concepts, and there's really no way to argue them. And then as I spent the time training with Sifu Ron, then I understood, okay, there's Jun Fan Jeet Kune Do, which I like how Ed put it in a video that we have coming out tomorrow. He says, I teach Lee Jun Fan Jeet Kune Do, meaning I teach what Bruce Lee taught up until the time he passed away, and maybe a little bit of what Guru Dan or Sifu Dan has expanded upon.
Right.
But like, I remember, and I was just teaching this last week, Sifu Fong was showing us a trapping drill that led to a takedown that led to this awesome armbar. And I'm like, I have never seen Wing Chun with arm bars. And it just goes to show, like, hey, look, I am growing my system. I have seen a hole or whatever, and I'm going to fix it. And that's what I was seeking out, I think, when I was training Taekwondo and karate. I'm like, well, I don't have any joint locks.
Yeah.
I need to have that to be a little bit more well-rounded martial artist.
Yeah.
And then it was when I met AJ, I learned what this grappling stuff was, and I'm like, well, I have no answer for this stuff. So fine, I'll put the keto on the back burner. And then I got into the stick work, and I learned very quickly the stuff that they taught us in karate was probably out of either a black belt magazine or from one book that they were like, look, this looks good. And then they were modifying nunchuck drills for stick work. And so that made a ton of fun that I had to learn all that. But I have video footage and private footage where I just throw my sticks in there and I'm like, I don't understand, sir. I can't do this. And then over time, you can see I'm getting better. And then I train with Sifu Ron, and he's showing me. I remember the first time he tried to show me the pull cue and the bang call, the spear. And I'm like, you want me to do
He started with that?
And I'm like, I can't process this. And I remember, I'll never forget, is one of the times we had him out at my school for a seminar, and he was showing us some footage on the iPad, and Sifu Inasana was teaching him something, and I saw in his face that same look, like, you want me to? I'm like, it was worth it. Okay, get lost too. Thank God, it's okay.
It's part of a tradition, that getting lost, right? You know, it's part of a tradition too. Being amazed by Francis Fong.
Oh, that guy is insane.
The first time I saw him, right? So I started. I trained with him the second week of my first experience. I spent a week with Dan Inasano, and then I spent a week with Francis Fong, because in my mind, Dan Inasano was Bruce Lee's premier disciple.
Yeah.
And I knew that Bruce Lee had also trained in Wing Chun. So I flew up from Barbados to spend a week with Inasano and a week with Francis Fong. And then I would go back home to Barbados and I would try to make sense of it for myself. Right. So I've known Francis Fong for 40 something years. Yeah, and so we started going to, at the time it was called the Southeast Conference. Okay. I started in 1991. My students started in 1993. So I saw him when he started adding that grappling to his Wing Chun.
Okay.
And I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
It was, I was just like, dude, what? Okay.
But the most amazing thing about it, we're looking at him, it's grappling, but it's still Wing Chun.
Right.
You know, it's still Wing Chun. Even though, so I've always been amazed by his ability to, no matter what it is that he's doing, you can see that Wing Chun is his base.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes people don't understand that about Jeet Kune Do people. You can be doing whatever it is that you're doing, but Jeet Kune Do is still your base.
Yeah.
So there are Jeet Kune Do people who's so like I use the phrase that my Filipino Kali is JKD tinged.
Yeah, I get it.
You see, right? You understand what I'm saying? Right? So I think there's still, I think there's still too much confusion out there. But I think as younger guys like you and Ed continue to learn and develop yourselves and put stuff out there. You know what I love about Ed Stahl? He did a video yesterday. I think it was yesterday. And it would appear to contradict a video from like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But I know Ed. So I asked him, oh, is this an example of the evolution of your thought? He goes, yes. You see? But now somebody who's looking to pick a fight with him. Right?
Well, so tomorrow's video, because I get into a discussion, and I've had this discussion with a few people about forms, katas, prearranged forms. And, again, my background is karate. So
right.
You can say pumps in Taekwondo, it's a kata. You can say, forms in JKD, it's a kata. To me, it's all the same thing. It's a prearranged set of movements. Boxing has combos, which are still katas to me. And so we had a discussion about forms, and do you teach them, and are they useful or not? And I was like, so what about, maybe some of the shadow boxing? It's not a kata. I'm like, but in boxing, you go jab, cross, hook, upper, upper, cross, hook, cross. That's a kata. He's like, no, it's not. I'm like, why is it not? And then, and you could see him getting red and getting frustrated. He's like, look, and he's trying to explain it. And it's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's about a 30-minute video. I'm going to break it up into 3 sections to make it more bite-sizable. But there's a guy that we work with, a guy named Sensei Josh. And when Ed is doing his Ping Choi Gua Choi video with Sensei Seth, I was like, and we talk about it in the video I'm going to drop tomorrow. I'm like, Ed's asking a question, but I said, I know we've trained with Guru Dan long enough. He has to know the answer, that this comes from the 60s and the karate man would block this way. I was like, he's got to know this. And so I called him. I'm like, hey, seriously, are you? He's like, no, it's just for the video, man. I was like, oh, okay, because I was worried. Like, did I catch something that you didn't catch? And I was like, Josh is going to eat this alive, because he's very karate oriented. And
now, which one is Josh? Is he the McDojo Life guy?
No, that's Rob. Josh is the Shirindokai Karate. He's our judo rep for Martial Arts Unlimited. My association that I'm under with AJ is called Martial Arts Unlimited, which is my larger channel. And then I have a Keishidojo channel.
Right. I was going to ask you about that, because I noticed that channel name as well.
Yeah. So Keishidojo is going to be my personal channel. Martial Arts Limited is for everybody in our association, kind of like how Mars has its own thing.
Right.
So we have an association primarily for military people, because, like, again, we'll train somewhere and then we'll get deployed, or we'll get PCS'd, and then we'll be at a new base. And so a student of mine, a guy named Dustin Mixon, was a phenomenal grappler, and I got him his blue belt in BJJ, and I think he might have got a stripe, and then he ended up PCSing to like England, and then he ended up going to like Hawaii, and then I think I bumped into him. Well, I bumped into him a couple of years ago in San Antonio for the Professor Machado affiliate camp.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, it's been like 10 years. You're still a blue belt? He's like, well, every time I got to a new base, they make me start over with my stripes. And the way a lot of times it works is, on average, it's 6 months or so for a stripe in jiu-jitsu. So I'm like, so you got 4 stripes, you got PCS, because it's been about 2 years, 3 years, you start over. And then you do that for 2 or 3 years, start over. I'm like, and I talked to AJ, I'm like, hey, we need something for these military guys to have some consistency, so when they get sent somewhere else, they don't have to start over. And so since my jiu-jitsu black belt is with Professor Machado, that's a big enough name in the world of jiu-jitsu where it's not just like, well, this guy JD says. It's like, hey, under Professor Machado's curriculum, I am vouching that this guy has that rank or those stripes. And then if he gets sent to England, I can hopefully keep that process going. And then I picked up Ed as a JKD guy for our little association. So if somebody is trying to train Jeet Kune and then they get deployed or PCS'd, there's a point man that they can talk to. And again, Ed's instructorship is with Guru Ron or Sifu Ron. So again, it's a strong enough name in the world of that to be like, okay, this guy actually has a real lineage. We'll honor the rank and we'll let you keep going versus saying, well, I don't know Ed Stahl, so start over. So that type of thing. So that's what the Martial Art Unlimited Association is designed for. And since we have people that are scattered throughout the military, the YouTube channel videos are for everyone. So that's why I can't just do whatever I want to do, because I'm like, well, I kind of got to cater this to everybody. So the Keishidojo channel is going to become my personal little place to do the things that I want to do that I really shouldn't do globally. And so
how do you keep all of that balanced?
Which thing?
Well, I mean, so you got responsibilities. You got responsibilities for Keishi. You got responsibilities for Martial Arts Unlimited, right? You've got responsibility. So you got to run the school.
Yeah.
Right. It's like a lot of plates up in the air spinning.
Yeah. I would say it's the military, because I was in the military for so long, and they trained us very well on how to handle a lot of stuff, a lot of stress.
Okay.
And so what happened when I retired is I don't have to go to that job anymore. I can just do my job. But my job is okay. I do want to have a retirement plan. Like, I want to eventually not teach every day, all day. Like right now, I teach, I think we mapped it out. I teach 24 classes a week. So I
remember those days.
I teach in the evenings. I teach at lunchtime. I have classes all over the place. And in the middle of that, I try to film videos and I try to edit them and I try to post them on the YouTube channels. And then most recently, I was educated on like, hey, if the school is going to be closed, AKA for Thanksgiving or for Christmas, you should do something for your students. So now I pre-film certain things and I release a class online. Even though there's no official classes to come to, you could still be home and do some training.
Right.
So, and then if they do that class, I still give them attendance credit for promotions and other things. Right. So I'm like, you can do that with those people. And then if you don't want to train, you don't want to do your classes during Thanksgiving break, so be it. You don't have to. But if you want to, or if your kid is driving you crazy, here, go do your lesson. Go watch JD do this thing. And so the association stuff was going to be a precursor to do seminars. I wanted to get out there and to teach a little bit more. Like, I have trained with Professor Seneca for BJJ, and I trained with, of course, Professor Machado, and then, of course, even Professor Eric Paulson. Right. And so I have a really good lineage when it comes to grappling. And then, of course, I got Guru Ron, I got Guru Dan, I got Sifu Ron, I got Sifu Dan, I got Sifu Ed. So I have all of these arts. And like you said, it's like, well, I want to share some of this and I want to pass it on. And the best way to do that is usually through seminars. And so between YouTube and seminars, that's my retirement plan. Like, hey, when I'm not teaching day to day, I would love to be like in Asanto and say, hey, I'm going to go here this weekend. And then next weekend, I can go to a seminar for myself. And then the week after that, maybe I go and then I have a weekend off. Like, I know myself and Ed are talking about training with legends. They just said they're going to have that again. And we already were like, hey, we're going, right? We're going. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited about that.
Yeah. Hey, clarify something for me. Ed's jiu-jitsu lineage is under Professor Pedro Sauer, isn't it?
Machado.
Oh, it's Machado?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Where the heck did I get that from? So tell me, again, referring back to the idea of plate spinning. Curriculum organization, because you've got the karate, you've got the kickboxing, you got the FMA. When you're officially certified, the JKD will come up. Yeah. What's the organizing template for all of that?
Okay. So for karate, my karate curriculum is what I've created for myself. Okay. And so I took my karate training from Shurite Karate, from Shoiryu Karate, when I took Shotokan karate, Wado-ki karate, and then Wakido karate, oddly enough, same name, but just different lettering. And I took all of that and even some of my Taekwondo, and I shoved all that into one package. And that is just my karate system. And then
does that run the gamut from kids all the way to adults?
It does.
Okay.
And then up until this year, I was running the Martial Art Unlimited Association Filipino martial art curriculum. And then I was just doing Ron stuff either as a supplement or on the side. And that has hurt me quite a bit because certain things that Ron has terminology for, I know by a different name because of a different curriculum. I'm like, you want me to do what's drill again? And then he shows, I'm like, oh, okay, Cambiata series or whatever. So I'm getting ready for apprentice instructor level 3 this year. And so I have moved all of my Kali to the Ron curriculum. So my terminology and my familiarity with it is just that much more solid. And the MAUA curriculum is on the back burner for now because I tweaked it a couple years ago, and minus maybe 20%, Ron has everything besides a couple little details that were martial art unlimited specific, and that's just from I guess from when AJ trained with Guru Tim Hartman, and so he has a few drills that just were different. But other than that, it's almost all the same stuff. The only difference is that I do prefer the MAUA curriculum is like the Le Bon Le Row series. It gets really long and it gets complicated, and then you kind of lose track of where some people are. And then Ron is so dynamic, and he's been with Guru Dan for so long that some things get changed throughout the years, and then you're like, well, which version do you want? And it's hard sometimes. And I know, when I was testing, he's like, well, I want to see this. And I'm like, I did that. And he's like, no, you're doing like out of order. And then the order was different. Right. So instead of it being Le Bon Le Row, Stick and Dagger, and this super long series, Martial Arts Limited has made it more bite-sized. So like we have what we call the counts. So like the 4 count with Stick and Dagger, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then that's it. That chunk is done. And then you can do what we call the Cambiata series, which is the, Cambiata, stab the hand, stab, armpit, loop, stab. And all of that is its own bite-sized chunk. Yeah. And then you have what we call counter for counter series, which is the thrust, and then you come over the knife and you stab, and then you Cambiata, and then you do all that stuff. And it's its own segment. And that has been really helpful for me teaching because it's not, okay, go, and then just keep going. And then you're like, where does it end? And then also the fact that you have Le Bon Le Row, single stick, double stick, Stick and Dagger, empty hand, it gets, for me, it gets confusing. And I think being military, I'm like, where does this go? Where does this go? And that was the hardest part. Like even with in Asano and seminars, I'm like, where is this at in the curriculum? Like, how do I know where I'm at with some of this stuff? Because one of my favorite things, like I am not an instructor in Asano yet. I have submitted my package, and I was supposed to do the final thing, and then COVID hit. Right. And so I got to redo my package and submit it to Ron and all that. And I'm hoping that happens this year. But I know I go to the Train with the Legends and Train with the Masters, and there are several drills that a lot of people are lost. And I'm like, and I go help them. And I don't have that instructor shirt. And I'm like, well, how do you know this? I'm like, well, I train with Guru Ron, and, and this is all part of what I've already done. Right. And they're like, you should be an instructor. I'm like, well, when the time comes, I'll be there. But, I'm enjoying the journey because it's so much fun. But that's part of it. It's like, hey, now I see how big this picture is, and the stuff with AJ helped, and then the stuff with Ron has helped tremendously, and then the stuff with Guru Dan has helped. Yeah. Like I learned the terminology and history with Guru Dan a lot, and even when I was taking my instructorship test with Guru Ron, he was talking about some of the terminology. I'm like, oh, it's this, it's Khalid Khalid. He's like, how do you know that? I'm like, well, that's good. Like, I got it. I got notes on it. Right. I did a video a few weeks ago I use Microsoft OneNote for all my note taking in all these seminars.
Oh, I saw that.
Which is
I
nice.
saw that one.
I have a history of all of the years, so I can type something in and say, look, in 2010, you said this, and this is the order.
Yeah.
And get rid of that or something. I don't know, but it's just like, that's how I keep track of everything.
Right. That was what I saw that video. And again, it reminded me of stuff from my past, because we have I developed what I call seminar language.
Yep.
So one of the problems was you would end up writing what Sifu Dan did, but you forgot to write what it was against.
Yep.
Right. So you have all his responses, but you forgot right. So I developed seminar language that goes, it's A versus B to C.
Yeah.
So anytime that you see versus, it means they're going at each other. Anytime that you see the conjunction to, it means it's a follow-on from what that person did.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
But we would write it out, and then literally, right. And you said something similar. Then you go back to the hotel room and you write it out in English.
Yeah.
But we were doing all of this by hand.
Yeah.
Right. In the 1980s.
I met AJ's instructor, a guy named Alex Murdine, back in Japan, and he was an actual Hatsumi Sensei, Togakureyo Ninpo Taijutsu ninja, like straight up 10th degree black belt in ninjutsu. Mm-hmm. And he had, and the best I can describe it is how I understand how Bruce Lee had binders, notebooks of all of his stuff. And then, of course, as we understand, the Tao is just pieces and chunks of that. So he has binders for ninjutsu, and he would just walk up and grab one off his shelf and flip it open, and it's all written in kanji. So he could have been lying to me, but he would read it to me. But what he did, which is what I adopted later, is he wrote everything in story form. So he had his original seminar notes, and then he went back and said, okay, so then that way, even if you took some time off, it's like reading a story, and then it makes total sense. And he would just grab a book, and he has probably trained ninjutsu in probably like 5 years, and he would read, it's like, oh, this is what it is. And he would just do it to me. And I'm like, wow. And so that's what I started doing. And even with Ed, when we go to the seminars together, he writes his notes, I write my notes. We go back to the hotel, we compare notes, hopefully fill in those gaps. And then when I get home, I come home and I start writing out like, okay, so the person throws a jab to your head, you're going to parry to the side, hit the inside of the arm, elbow, thumb to the eye, punch, and I write it all out. And then that way, it's the same thing. I can just grab it, even if it's been 2 years. I'm like, oh, it's
do you write it out in story form too?
I do.
Yeah.
And then that way, it's just like reading a book or anything. Right. And then you're like, your mind.
Interesting.
And then Eric Paulson talked about the same thing. And he's like, yeah. And then your mind's eye can still play it, and your body still remembers the movements. So your subconscious muscle memory kind of goes through it on its own. It's like, yeah, that's how it works. And then you can do it. Yeah. So that's what I've been doing for a while. And I don't always do it. I try to do it as often as I can, though. I try to go back because I have notebooks that say like RL to RT and then F. And I'm like, I don't know what this means anymore. And it's so funny because Inasano talked about, it's like, I got notebooks that I won't throw away because I'm thinking someday I'll remember what this means.
Exactly.
And I'm like, yeah, me too, because I got notebooks, and I'm like, but I know damn well it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, you do have to develop your proprietary language. But Bruce Lee did that.
Yeah.
Right. You know, the ABC and the PIA and all that stuff. I don't know if people realize that. That stuff is not common in the 1960s amongst martial artists.
Right. That
is unique to the Jeet Kune way. And so that's the type of thing that that makes me proud to be a Jeet Kune Do practitioner, to be part of the lineage, in that there was so much revolutionary stuff.
Yeah.
But we have a post going on right now, and have you you weigh in on this for me? The general public today, tell me if it's a generational thing. They're not even aware of who Bruce Lee is and or what Jeet Kune Do is.
That would be true.
Okay.
Because I've asked my students, and I like, so do you guys know who Bruce Lee is? And they're like, no. And I will literally stop my class and I will walk into my office, and I have these big banners, posters, things that I've bought over the years, or my mom has bought me. And I walk in the room, I'm like, this is Bruce Lee. And and that's actually why I started martial arts. Is I actually saw the movie Fists of Fury when I was a kid at my Aunt Carla's house. And I'm like, I want to do that. That was so cool. And my mom couldn't afford it. She was a single parent, and my dad really didn't help out in any way, shape, or form. And my friend Paul, his dad and mom put him in Taekwondo. And I would just go and I would watch Taekwondo. And I'd be in my little chair and I'd be doing everything in the chair. And I don't know if somebody took pity on me, or if somebody was like, hey, look, this poor little kid, he wants it so bad. So eventually, and his name was Master Kim. I don't know anything more. And I think I was 7, maybe 5. And they said, hey, you can come on the floor. And I would get to do stuff. And I truly feel it was one of those situations, like, because I couldn't do it, I tried that much harder than all those kids that were just stuck there like, well, I just need you to go do something. Because like, I worked my butt off. And if we couldn't go, my friend Paul's dad was a black belt in Taekwondo. And so he'd have us go do it in the backyard. And Paul never wanted to do it. He was just like, and I was like murdering that poor kid. I'm like, wah, wah, and I would do all the moves as good as could be done. And is to this day, I don't think my mom paid for lessons. Somebody, I think, donated me a gi. Like, here you go. This so-and-so outgrew this or whatever. I don't know. I know I was given a uniform, and then I never tested with them. I remained, I had belts. I had colored belts, but I never took a test. So I don't even remember exactly how I got a colored belt, to be honest, now that I think about it. But I know I had a yellow belt, and I know I had an orange belt. And then my mom and my stepdad, we moved to Chicago, and then I was all alone. And then I ended up dealing with bullies and do all that stuff. But even though I had some experience, I think I wasn't near any family nor any friends. So even though I could defend myself, it was like, yeah, but the whole class is your enemy right now. So like, even defending myself, it wasn't going to happen. And it wasn't until I met Sensei Kevin Casey at a place called American Karate Studio, and I found my martial art home at that time. I was about 14, 15, because I remember I had to ride my bike there. And I would ride my bike to the gym. I would do all the classes. And then my mom would pick me up on the way home from work, throw the bike in the car, and then I would, do all that the next day. And I did that every day until I joined the military, like pretty much. Like I got up, I got my black belts from him. But that's where my confidence and my bully prevention and my whatever, and the school I have created here is formulated off of that, because that was my home away from home. That was my martial arts family, to where I felt comfortable. And like, my mom was a hairstylist, and there would be times that she'd have to take trips to go get her updating of her licenses or whatever. And so there would be times I didn't have anyone. I'm 15 years old. I'm home alone. I think she left me some money for pizzas or McDonald's or whatever. And then like, who do you go to? And all my family lived, 2 hours away. So that was my home. That was my family. And so being here in South Carolina, I'm it. My son lives about an hour away, and my daughter moved to Montana, and I'm divorced. So this is my martial art family. This is my people, and all the rest of the family lives up in Chicago. So I'm like, this is who I have, and all of our military people. I'm like, this is what I have for you guys. This is your family.
The 5-year-old, 7-year-old Taekwondo stuff, was that in Sumter?
No, that was in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I have no ties to the city other than the military put me here for my last assignment.
Okay. Now, I thought when I heard Sumter, I go, well, yeah, that's in Georgia. And then I looked it up and I was like, Dwight, you're such an idiot. You don't know your American history.
Oh, right? Fort Sumter from the war.
Yeah. Yeah. For some reason, I thought, yeah. So what, okay, well, you're a military guy. So what am I confusing Fort Sumter with in Georgia?
Fort Gordon.
I have no idea.
I mean, there's a lot of,
you know what, the battle scene in that Denzel Washington and
Glory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, what did you say? Pride?
Glory.
No, Glory. Yeah, Glory. Right. Does that depict that's not Sumter, is it?
I would have to watch it again. I haven't seen it in probably 20 years.
Yeah.
But there is in the town Camden, oddly enough, is Fort Sumter.
Okay.
It's not in Sumter.
Right.
And if I go to Charleston, they have out on the water, they also have a thing that I think they call Fort Sumter. I'd have to look it up. But this Sumter County is huge. Mm-hmm. Like it goes from Columbia to almost like halfway to Myrtle Beach, and then it goes halfway to Charleston, and it goes up pretty far north. So like Sumter County does envelop Camden like that. So maybe that's why it's called Fort Sumter, but the city itself is called Camden, South Carolina. Right. But they do still have like the old, like the spikes and everything, and you can go tour it and all that. So it's probably what it is.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of that down in this area. You can go anywhere and like, okay, in Savannah, they still have areas. And then Charleston still has like the palmetto tree is the tree for the state, because when the British were attacking us, the palmetto tree is so dense that they would build little walls that it could stop cannonballs. So like, that's why they used them so much. Mm-hmm. And that's for the state.
Hey, well, listen, I'm glad you accepted my invitation to come on here. This has been quite an education for me. Tell me who you'd like. I know Ed Stahl, but besides him, who you'd like me to bring onto the show.
I went through a few of them, because I've never done a podcast. This is my first one. And so I jumped on to watch several of them. I saw you did Ron, and I saw you did Kevin Lee and some others. But I am even looking here. I don't know. Did you do Darren Severs yet?
Yes.
Oh, you have? Okay. I didn't find that one.
Yeah. No, actually, I messed up on that one, and I didn't upload that until last week. It was was Darren and Brandon Ryan.
Okay.
Yeah. So
who else would be? Because I mean a lot of my, I guess I would say my Mars brothers have been on here already. Someone said Dick Arrow. Yeah, that'd be good. Actually, Dick Arrow would be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I've tried.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Trying to think. I saw you had Mark Kruko.
Or who you'd like to see again? Ed Stahl.
Again. There's a guy. I would be curious. I don't know much about him. There's a guy in Myrtle Beach called Valor Jeet Kune. It's Valor JKD.
Okay.
And he has come to a couple of the Ron seminars, and I don't know much about him. So I couldn't say anything other than I have seen some of his YouTube stuff or his Instagram stuff, whatever you want to call it, Facebook. And I know they came to a couple of the Ron seminars.
Yeah.
So I would be interested or curious to see, I guess, what he has to say in some of this.
Yeah.
Because as far as I understand, and this isn't anything against him, it could be the student, it could be whatever, But as far as I understand, in training with Ed and in training with Ron, the journey has taken me so long because I haven't pushed to test. And Jeet Kune Do inherently is meant to be pretty simple. And so I know in training with the legends, which we did, 40 hours, Ed said, dude, you did like 75% of the curriculum this week alone because we did so much of it. And I'm like, wait, if I did 75% of the curriculum in this time frame, he has a student of his that I've trained with a few times. He's been there for like 9 years and is getting ready for his instructor's test. And from what I was talking to that kid, Gary Dill, I trained with that dude. That was interesting. That kid trains like 5 days a week. And so I'm like, why is it taking him so long? And maybe they have a different curriculum, or maybe they have a different system, or they have a different whatever. But I'd be curious to know like how they do their setup to why some kid who's as dedicated as that kid is taking 9 years to test when, if I was focused, I could probably, do it in 5, maybe 4 if I was really, really on it. And again, if I did 75% of the curriculum in a course of a week, and granted, I mean, I know I did 75% not testable, but I mean, again, I can't see that being the case. And I see some Michael Brown said Gary Dill. I train with that dude. I would not recommend that one bit. I have a pretty good story for that one day.
Okay.
That was a whole nother other. Ooh.
Okay.
Because he came to Sumter.
Say that again.
Gary Dill came to Sumter.
Oh, okay.
So I did a seminar with him before I met Ron and before I met anybody else. I did a seminar with him.
Right.
And for somebody who's making their money off of using the Jeet Kune Do name, he sure did trash talk Bruce Lee and Linda a whole bunch.
Oh man. Yeah. Oh well. All right. So okay, I think I froze, but can you still hear me?
I can.
Okay. All right. Well, that's probably the signal for us to wrap this up. So again, JD Olsen, such a pleasure to meet you, man. I really, really appreciate it. And I love the work that you're doing, and I wish you all the best. And we will do this a second time for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, man. You take care.
Thank you, sir.